I did wonder when I was actually putting this piece together that if Santa was was being interviewed by People magazine or Rolling Stone, where he was having one of these, conversations about why he does what he does, it struck me that if he was asked, why does he not come to adults? Is it because they don't believe? I think he'd probably say, not because they don't believe, because you don't have to believe. They just don't ask him for something. So the children ask, but the adults don't. And what I'd like to offer you as a way to perhaps make a significant impact on your lives is to start to embrace the possibility of reinventing Santa and what he used to do for you back in the time when you were 7, 8, and you were convinced, A, that he existed, and B, that whatever you asked for, that you would get. I mean, remember those times when you might stand outside the shop and you look at that shiny bicycle and you just knew that if you said you wanted it and you put it on the list and you wrote about it, that you'd get it. And then there was PlayStations and Argos catalogs and all the ways in which kids get to see what they want to choose for their list now. And they're convinced they're going to get it. And the problem is that once we go to the stage of 11, 12, 13, there's always that sibling or friend in school who spoils it for us. As parents, you've probably had the situation where your child comes home and they're in tears because someone has told them that Santa doesn't exist. And you try to actually work it through with them. And they're upset initially, but eventually what happens, they start to actually see, actually it's cool not to believe in Santa. And they then start holding it out as a way of saying, I'm more like Mum, because I know that Santa doesn't exist. And I can keep that secret with her and my siblings. I'm not going to tell them. Keep that secret with Mum. But the problem with it is that at that age, when we start to not believe, we also start to lose our innocence. We start to lose our sense that we can actually consciously create something. And we start to buy into the idea that we have to earn money, we have to get qualifications, we have to know people, we have to get stuff in order to get stuff. And then when it comes to things like health and relationships, we're just dealt with cards. We can't really do anything about that. I'd suggest we can if we go back to Santa. Because what happens when we go back to that place is we just focus on what we want. And we just think it's possible. And as a coach and as a business consultant, I would say only 100% of the times do I have situations where I walk into a client's office or they come into mine. And when I ask them what they want, after they complain of the problems in their lives or their business, they actually don't have an answer. A lot of them come out with some bland generalizations, which you tend to get on the business side. And the people from a personal point of view, they almost seem afraid to ask. But everyone knows. And it's one of the jobs of a coach to actually find out and to get them comfortable with that. It's really empowering when that happens. That's when the magic starts. And that's when Santa starts to reappear. It's even more important and more valuable and more powerful to write it down and to be able to reflect on it, touch base with it on a regular basis. Because things start to happen really, really magically and really quickly once you do that. And it's not just based on experience. There's actually some brain science. Now, I'm not a neurologist, just a mere ex-accountant. So I won't go into the brain science too deeply, but there's a part of your brain known as the reticular activating system, or the RAS. And it's essentially acts like an antenna, which filters out things that we don't want to see and filters in things that we actually want to put our attention on. And when we decide what we want, the RAS starts to kick in. And I'm sure you've experienced it when you actually decide that you want that new car, or that new bag, or that new item of clothing. You actually start to notice it. Other people might be wearing it, which may not be a good thing when you get into the clothing area. But you start to notice things that you wouldn't have noticed before, and that's because you put your attention on it. Unfortunately, the RAS, though, works on the other side as well, in that it doesn't know what's good or bad or right or wrong as far as you're concerned. So when you focus on the negative stuff, when you focus on the fact that maybe you have that job that you're not that interested in, or that you don't have the relationship, or maybe your health isn't that good, and you talk about it, your focus goes on that. And it keeps you there. So the power we actually have when we start to focus on what we want is that we begin to move away from that place. Just think what might be possible if you got back to the place where you said, I know I can create whatever I want. I can be that 8-year-old again looking in that shop window. I can have that bicycle. I can have that job. I can have the relationship. I can have the great business. I just need to decide on what it is. I just need to write it down. And I just need to do something really, really small to move in that direction. Because the other side, and it's been mentioned already, which is much more difficult to put into words and to explain, is best explained actually by a quote from Paulo Coelho in The Alchemist, where he says that when we put our attention on something, when we say what we want, the universe conspires to make it happen for us. And that's when it gets woo-woo. That's when the synchronicities kick in. That's when you start seeing coincidences. And stuff starts to happen that when you look back on how you got to where you are, you would never have planned it that way. You would never have worked it out. Because it never would have dawned on you that actually events could have occurred in the way that they did in order to get to where you're at. I see it so many times with clients. There's so much evidence of it there, and I'm sure you've seen it yourselves. So what I would say to you in bringing all this together is that it has to start somewhere. And the place to start is for you to decide what you want. And the next thing is to write it down. And why I bring Santa into this is, if you believe, if you go back to that place of an 8-year-old and write him his letter this year, and then go a bit further and take that small action and post it. It's fairly simple. It's just S. Claus, care of North Pole. But I won't suggest that you do it just for Christmas. I'd suggest you do it all the time. Because we're creative beings. We live when we create. We're happy when we create. And we've got evidence of everything that we create all around us. We create good stuff. We create stuff that may not be so good, but that's only because we haven't chosen what we would like rather than focusing on what we don't like. There's huge power there. And it just needs us to own that power, take the opportunity of knowing that we can create and bring ourselves back to the 8-year-old us. Know that we can do it. Know that it's not childish. and know that actually the way in which anything has ever been created is that someone had an idea, wrote it down, and then did something small about moving it forward. So as a present to yourself this Christmas, don't wait till the new year, as has already been said. Write the letter for Santa. Commit to do it on a regular basis. And then watch what happens. I guarantee you, things will take off. It has taken off with every person that I've ever experienced that has done this. So in bringing this to a close, I would say we're responsible for where we're at. And where we're at is just where we're at. It's just the starting point if we choose it to be a starting point. And let's start giving ourselves the opportunity to take us from here and to soar. So once again, I'd like to thank you for the privilege of being here and to wish you a really happy Christmas and a fabulous life. Thank you.